If you go onto the, as you're looking at this on the SWUGO site, if you click on polls, this should pop up. In all of your work with beginning farmer training programs, how many partner organizations do you work with? And if you could just click on that and give us an answer, that would be great. So as you're reviewing that poll, I'd like to talk about the purpose of this panel, and that's to really to highlight the partners and the coordination that happens with other organizations, and what are the collaborative training approaches, and how do you get access to specialized programming? How do you find out about USDA programs? And what are the things you should expect about partnerships? Beyond the networking that your students, your beginning farmer students are going to make, how can you cultivate the partnerships and the network that you need to be an effective trainer? So our panelists will be talking about that today. They'll be led by Sarah Campbell of USDA. She is the beginning farmer, National Beginning Farmer Coordinator. And Sarah herself is a farmer outside of Washington, D.C., a beginning farmer herself. Also in her role is at USDA is I think the first person to hold that position that was created as a result of the previous Farm Bill. So before I toss this over to Sarah, I just want to look at the poll response just quickly. It looks like most people are working with between 2 and 5 partners, and some are more than 15. Gosh, love to see that. So if you answer the poll, you can actually see the results, and I will now turn this over to Sarah and ask her to carry on with our program, and then just keep looking at those poll numbers as they change as more people sign up. Sarah, thanks very much for being our moderator today.
And thank you so much for having me, everyone. I'm really excited to be here and to be part of this panel. As Gary said, I'm Sarah Campbell. I'm the Beginning Farmer and Rancher Program Coordinator here at USDA. USDA is a very large agency, and there are a large department, and there are a lot of agencies, and they all do really different beginning farmer and rancher work. Some of them focus on delivering programs and services directly to beginning farmers themselves. Some offer grants and technical assistance or collaborate with organizations and service providers, such as the folks who are participating here in this conference and who we'll be hearing from today. So there's a lot of opportunity for partnership with USDA and then also between organizations. And so we're going to talk today about leveraging partnerships from the local to the national level. And we have 3 wonderful panelists here with us today. Jennifer Hashley from the New Entry Sustainable Farm Project, Vicki Carter from Vets on the Farm, and Katie Trozzo from Virginia Tech. And they're all going to be talking about what their organizations do and how they make meaningful collaborations and partnerships. So they're going to kick it off with some introductions and talk a little bit about their work, and then we're going to have some discussion. So I'm going to turn it over to Jennifer to talk about her work and her organization.
Great, thank you very much, Sarah. I appreciate it. So I'm Jennifer Hashley, the director of the New Entry Sustainable Farming Project. And if you want to go to the next slide, I can start there with the picture of our program here. We're based in Beverly, Massachusetts, which is in the North Shore of Massachusetts, about 20 miles north of Boston. And we have a 15-acre incubator farm, and you're looking at our historic barn on the property and the greenhouses off in the distance there. So next slide. The New Entry program, our mission really is to train beginning farmers to improve our local and regional food system and to make sure that the food that they produce is both nutritious and culturally appropriate and accessible to all individuals. And so we do that through a variety of programs. Next slide, please. Just wanted to give you a little bit of context of our program areas. We have 3 main programs: our farmer training program, which is all of our courses and workshops, which I'll talk about in a second, our food hub, where we distribute the products our farmers grow. And then we do a lot of national capacity building with other networks of incubator and apprenticeship training programs across the country. So next slide. So our farmer training program, our courses includes all of our courses and workshops and the incubator itself. We do an explore farming workshop, some business planning courses that are 8 weeks twice a year. And then we do a practical experiential education crop production course where folks can get hands-on learning experience. And then we offer ad hoc workshops throughout the year on food safety or direct marketing or record keeping, depending on the needs of the farmers and the interest and other offerings that are happening in our area. And then folks who finish a completed business plan are eligible to lease land on our incubator farm for up to 3 years. So they get a 1/4 acre of land their first year, and they can expand up to a full acre over the 3-year period and have access to all kinds of technical assistance, the equipment, tractors, tool supplies, greenhouse, coolers, wash station, all of that to run their operation, and then have access to market through the food hub. So next slide. So this is just a picture of the crop production course. It's we organize into the 3 5-week-long workshops. We offer it both online and in person. So it's a hybrid, although this year, obviously with COVID, was fully online. And then they do a lot of the production in our 3/4 acre demonstration plot, and we have field scale work so they can get their hands in the dirt. Next slide. And this is a little bit about our business planning course. It's also a hybrid online and in person in the classroom, but was all online this year. And we go over everything from developing marketing plans and market channel assessment, risk management topics, crop planning, food safety, cash flow, but enterprise budgeting, so that they end the course with a completed business plan. And we use Ag Plan, so we do that online. And we have a YouTube channel, so I just wanted to point that out. If folks wanted to get a virtual tour of our program, we have a virtual tour posted on our YouTube channel. You can see it all in detail up in the flesh with all the things that we have to offer here as part of the farmer training program. So next slide. And this is what it looks like. This year we had 11 businesses on the property growing, and as I said, they can stay up for up to 3 years, and we keep rotating farmers in and out. This year we have 4 folks graduating from the program. 2 of them purchased farms, and 2 of them are going on to lease other land as they move forward and expand their business. So, and we have a lot of partnerships in the farmer training program. We frequently use a lot of speakers, alumni, former farmers. We bring in FSA and NRCS USDA agencies to talk about their programs and services. We work with the Department of Ag Resources to talk about their programs for farmers. We're always trying to help farmers who are looking for land connect to the land trust. We work a lot with Land for Good and have collaboration with them. The Carrot Project, who does farm business technical assistance. We are certified organic on our incubator farm. So we have our organic certifiers come and do workshops on that process. We work with our legal services food hub to connect farmers to legal resources, farm credit. We have a partnership with the Urban Farming Institute for outreach and assistance to urban growers. We work with Extension. A lot of people are involved to expose our beginning farmers to those programs and services. Next slide, please. And then with our food hub, same thing. We are buying, aggregating, and distributing from the farmers on our incubator and our alumni in the region. It's a direct market outlet for farmers. And then we do a lot of food access work to make sure that the food not only gets to our CSA customers, but to a lot of senior centers, food banks, food pantries, homeless shelters, and other food access programming. And we do a lot of market-based training through the food hub as well on post-harvest handling. We are Commonwealth Quality Program food safety certified here at the farm, and help farmers figure out all of their other market connections as well. So next slide. So a lot of the partnerships that are involved in that are both incubator farmers that are our suppliers, and then our food access partners who purchase the food to be able to allow us to donate it to folks in need who aren't able to pay for it. We do work with institutional partners like Tufts Dining. We're involved with the Mass Farm to School program. So we sell to Salem Public Schools, Essex North Shore Cafeteria. We work with Farm to Institution New England. This year, for a lot of our food access work, we work with Boston area gleaners and Building Audacity and the Food Project. And then we're also doing some value-added production through our food hub. So working with Root, which is a youth culinary training program, and then the Western Mass CDC and Commonwealth Kitchen and others. So a lot of partnerships there to get the food to folks who need it in different forms. Next slide. And then with our national networks, we are kind of the backbone organization that helps provide technical assistance and capacity building to other incubator and apprenticeship training programs across the country. So we have some core partners who are technical assistance partners in that effort that are, their logos are here. And we do a lot of land grant collaborations and research projects to basically kind of enhance the agricultural economy and structure that our beginning farmers are launching into. So we do different research projects and collaborative work like the GREW project that I'm on with Katie around evaluation of beginning farmer programs. We're doing a farm labor study with all the land grants in New England, looking at different alternative farm labor models. And then we are also doing another project with Cornell and University of Maine around social sustainability of farmers. So looking at mental health and well-being and those factors. We're involved with our Mass Food Systems Collaborative, which is a statewide organization that looking at food policy and systems within the state, and then involved in a lot of other efforts. So we feel like we have to stay involved and connected, and we do that through a variety of partnerships in that way. So next slide. And then I just wanted to sum up my approach to partnerships. I mean, I think it's really important, and I know we'll talk about this more later, to really have shared goals, visions, and values to make partnerships successful, and good communication, and certainly resources and funding to be able to enter into collaborative projects with partners sweetens the deal when the first two are able to be met, and then having some real actual funding to help share in that work. And then as long as both partners are having beneficial outputs and it's meeting both of your missions, I think that's a real win-win. And being able to evaluate what's working well and provide honest feedback to each other, I think can keep those partnerships moving forward. And sharing the credit where credit is due, and then making sure it's fun. I mean, you want to be able to enjoy the people that you work with and have a personal relationship with folks and enjoy the work. So that's kind of my introductory overview. So thank you.
Thank you so much for sharing that. And now we will hear from Vicki.
Great. Good morning, everybody. And I guess I can still say good morning because out here in Spokane, Washington, I'm slightly behind. So it is morning here. And I'll just wait for my first slide. If, there we go. Okay. I'm Vicki Carter. I'm the director of the Spokane Conservation District. And you might wonder how a conservation district would get involved in a veteran ag-based program. And it's really the roots of all conservation is agriculture. We've obviously had a lot to do with soil and water conservation since the 30s. We were born out of the Dust Bowl era. And just in the last several years, we've partnered with many USDA programs, and they've had a growing emphasis on veteran-based agriculture. And so with my background, I took a look at that and thought that that would be a perfect fit for us. There are 3,000 conservation districts all across the US. There's one in just about in every county. Some counties have more. And they're in rural areas and urban areas. So they actually do make a perfect partner and a perfect setting for a veteran ag-based program. Next slide, please. I've been working with the Spokane Conservation District for nearly 30 years now. And so I have a deep connection in agriculture with our farmers and certainly with veterans, as I come from a very large military family. My son is in his 4th deployment right now. He just left last Saturday for the Middle East, and 4th time around. And in 2013, I was invited to see this film, which is on the bottom of the screen, called Ground Operations, Battlefields to Farm Fields. And the title alone caught my attention, and I was instantly interested in what this was. And it was the depiction of our newest generation of veterans that have come back and found themselves in a time in their life where they wanted change. They were looking for what they call a new mission. And so this shows how they, in 8 or 10 different scenarios, they found that in farming and in agriculture. And why this is important to us now, of course, is because, as a movement across the nation, we're realizing that the average farmer is over 60 years old, and the American farmer has taken on feeding the world. That's what we do here in America. And there's also this call and this national drive for better food, for more nutrient dense food. So the fact that we all eat makes this incredibly important to us. And so taking a look at our food security, especially we've noticed, I mean, it was a big notice in the COVID period where we actually had some food scarcity in some areas. So our food security truly is our national security. And who better to take on our national security than our veterans? So next slide, please. So our veterans bring a unique set of skills. We call these our transitional skill set. And many of them are directly applicable to in agriculture and natural resource careers. So in order to feed our communities and the world for that matter, we're going to need these kind of skilled people. And there's never been a better time to do this. In the last 10 years, as I said, and especially the last 4, the USDA has been extremely responsive to this need that veterans have, and have put out several programs, both individual programs and funding programs for training for our veteran communities. Next slide, please. And certainly we couldn't do any of this work without partners, and that's what the topic of this session is. And these are just the partners that we started with, and our list is exhaustive. But first and foremost is the Spokane Conservation District, and that's who I work for. They have provided me the ability to start this Vets on the Farm program and to pay my salary. So anything that we do in that program is, there's no cost to the program for my work as the administrator or the director. We also work with Upper Columbia RC&D, and that helps us stretch out and reach beyond the borders of just Spokane, but it actually helps us move into, we're in 7 different counties in Washington State. Certainly I have to say that one of the big lifts that we have received is with Northwest Farm Credit Services, in the way of training that they've provided, the way of financial funding that they've offered, and just as a partner, they continue to come to the table year after year. And one of the lady that's in the middle of this photograph here, she is Wendy Knott. She was in charge of the Ag Vision program when I started Vets on the Farm, and so she's really my co-partner and co-sponsor in this effort. We work with the Washington Department of Veteran Affairs, both in terms of grants that we've received and a continuation, or an expansion, I should say, of what we call the Farmer Veteran Coalition Washington State Chapter. WSU Extension, we work extensively with them, and education program that we use as our cornerstone, which is Cultivating Success. Certainly the Farmer Veteran Coalition, and again, the Farmer Veteran Coalition for Washington State. And then I'd like to mention Entman Brother Farms, because they are the landowner, just everyday folks that heard about our program that donated the land for our farm, and I'll show you a picture of that in just a minute. And then our most recent partner is the Inland Northwest Farmers Market Association, and I've got more about them in just a minute too. We also, I just want to mention, we have many other partners, including local Rotary clubs and Lions clubs, and Home Depot has been a big partner to our program here in Spokane. But through our programs and resources, we offer educational opportunities, as well as on-farm internships and ag-related employment. And we try to be the conduit or the connection for our veteran farmers in reaching information for local, state, and federal programs that are available to them. We have found that often there's such a myriad of programs out there, and they get lost in that. And certainly when somebody's lost long enough, they will give up. So we try to think of this as our roadmap for our veterans, and getting them on the right road and being able to help steer, part of that direction for them has been really important. Next slide, please. So where do we do all of our great work? Our veterans have named our little 3-acre farm the Red Poppy Farm, and it started in 2015. I love this picture because this is just an aerial photograph, and this, you can see all the handwriting. This was our very first meeting when I met with the landowners, and they brought this to me, and I just hand scratched addresses on there, and where the buildings were and borders. And for some reason, this is, I don't know, it's like a child to me, a child's picture in my wallet. It's just very endearing. But this is where we are. And if you're familiar with Spokane at all, or Washington State, we're located on the Great Palouse, the rolling hills of the Palouse. This was an old cabbage farm at one time back in the early 1900s. And then it sat really dormant for quite a while and was vacated property. When we got it, it had some Timothy hay on it, but it really wasn't being used to its potential. Next slide, please. In 2015, we transformed it into our Red Poppy Farm, as I said, and we have been able to help our veterans with crop production and rotation, greenhouse management, fencing, small livestock operations, and we also teach a number of conservation practices, low flow irrigation, hoop houses, composting techniques, and we also really reach out with our GAP certification and our marketing efforts. Next slide, please. And we were able to take our little 3-acre farm and turn it into this really lush, beautiful, fertile ground, and we're able to grow organic, fresh food for our community. And up here is where we train 6 to 8 veterans at a time in an intensive vegetable production cycle that we use. Next slide, please. All summer long, we run a farm stand with our veterans as interns, and we produce food for programs like the USDA Farm to Families Food Box, which was an emergency food box program as a result of COVID. Next slide, please. And this program that we have is in partnership with the Inland Northwest Farmers Market Association and has expanded our business. So as our fields have grown, equally important, our veterans have grown. And to date, we have assisted over 300 veterans who have been interested in agriculture and come to us. And we've produced over 20 tons of food that we've put out organically and sustainably grown into our local food system. And this all, of course, helps reduce our food miles. Next slide, please. Part of our business model includes a mobile farm stand and that our interns run. And through generous donations, we were able to purchase this refrigerated truck. And just recently, we were able to have it all decaled. And so this was the day that the truck arrived back up on the farm. They were all very excited about that. Next slide, please. And so for us, what does success look like? This is Bree Scott. She came to us 2 years ago out of the U.S. Air Force. And she's just wrapping up her 2-year internship, which is through the Washington State Department of Veteran Affairs. She is now a farmer. She has 5 acres of her own farm. She's a CSA partner, and she's recently been hired part-time as a farm to school coordinator, which is through our Washington State Office of Public Instruction. She also just recently signed on to be a pollinator project partner. So Bree is just one of many, but I love to see her truly grow into her new career and her new mission as a farmer. Next slide, please. And as I mentioned, we were partners with the Inland Northwest Farmers Market Association, and during COVID, we had a no-contact truck-to-trunk delivery system. So as we packed boxes in warehouses, our truck went out to the 11 different farmers markets for distribution, and we were able to take them right off the truck and deliver them to the trunk of a vehicle for our customers, and with no contact. And this was so successful that we've continued to work this program, even though we're really outside of some of the restrictions that we had early on. This was extremely important early, back in March and April when we were under such tight restrictions for contact. Next slide, please. And 5 years into our program, we are still on the grow, and that is our refrigerated truck that makes its way all around Spokane and some of the other areas surrounding us, the regional areas. And believe me, that truck all decaled up like that gets a lot of attention. Next slide, please. And then just circles back that our belief is that if we teach our veterans to feed themselves and their families, they'll be able to feed a community, and one at a time we'll connect the dots, and as farmers we will be able to feed the world, and we'll be able to feed them healthy, life-sustaining food, good food. And growing good food and growing good people is really our mission, and we love to be able to help cultivate the next generation that takes care of our land. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Vicki. These are just really wonderful stories, and I love the focus on food security and both of the stories that we've heard today and the work that your organizations do. It's a really interesting connection to the beginning farmer work, and we do see at least lots of beginning farmers get into agriculture because they are interested in that and they really want to be connected to their communities. But
That's right.
yeah, and last but not least, we have Katie from Virginia Tech, who has done a lot of additionally excellent work. I've had the pleasure of working with Virginia Tech when I worked in the field, and pretty familiar with the sort of like really dynamic network that you all have there. So I look forward to folks hearing about it.
Great, thanks so much, Sarah. And I'll go to my first slide, Morgan. Great, so I am the coordinator of the Virginia Beginning Farmer and Rancher Coalition. I'm housed in the Department of Agricultural Leadership and Community Education at Virginia Tech. Next slide, please. And I'll start with who we are. We are a statewide coalition of agricultural organizations and farm businesses, and we're a backbone support organization. So through partnership with VSU and Cooperative Extension here at Tech, we're really doing a lot of backbone activities to maintain partnerships and really bring together the possibility for collective impact across our state. Next slide, please. And we're one of those organizations with 15 plus partnerships. Right now we have over 35 partnerships, and that spans from farm businesses in our state to federal and state organizations, as well as NGOs, and also our 2 land grant institutions and extensions. So next slide, please. We also have a really active advisory group, which is a place where we do some capacity building and partnerships as well. We usually have 2 beginning farmer participants and 2 service provider participants in every one of our boards, and each member has a 2-year term. So this is really a place where we're building a lot of relationships and where coalition organizations are really contributing to the cause. And they also guide a lot of the decision making and help us move towards our goal here together of improving opportunities for beginning farmers and ranchers in Virginia so that they're both viable and sustainable for the farmer and the larger community. So next slide, please. To address that goal, we have 4 main objectives: coalition building and capacity building, which has always been really front and center in our program, as well as whole farm planning programs and curriculum. And we also develop a lot of learning resources and conduct a lot of social networking to keep everybody connected. So I'll go into each one of these. So our coalition and capacity building right now really is focused within our advisory group, where we have a lot of connections and relationships that are built and tended monthly. We also have, we conduct evaluation and reporting activities and share that with the entire coalition for transparency. And we also host a number of annual coalition gatherings, 1 to 3 times a year. And that's where partners can get together and just really maintain and build connections. Next slide, please. So for our whole farm planning programs, this is kind of a unique model where we worked with organizations across the state that support beginning farmers, and they got together to develop themes and curriculum that they felt were really important for beginning farmers in the state. And they joined forces and developed these 3 modules along with a few others. And our coalition continues to develop more resources as well, which is on the next slide. But what's unique is that they came together to develop these learning materials, and then each organization kind of uses those learning materials as they see fit. So it can be applied uniquely, whether it's NRCS using this or whether it's the Fauquier Education Farm using it. It kind of has a little bit of a different flavor based on who's using it. So our other additional learning resources, one, we try to uplift what our coalition partners are doing. So we usually are always constantly communicating about what everybody's doing across the state, but we also provide unique offerings. We develop monthly webinar series, which we've done for many years, but with COVID, we kind of amped up a bit. And this is where the advisory group really feeds into our direction, and they really help us get a pulse of what's needed for beginning farmers on the ground. So we have a monthly webinar series, and that's archived on our website. We also have a number of collaboratively written documents, over 25 on our publications page of our resources. And this is where, so the coalition really fostered the partnerships of people coming together to develop the training modules, the whole farm planning modules. But that same model has been applied to different topics as well. And I wanted to just highlight our most recent project, which is the Farm Safety, Health, and Wellness Project, where a number of partner organizations came together to provide content and publications around farm financial health. So we have a lot of really great resources on our website that were collaboratively developed. Next slide, please. And also our social networking, we have the main suite of social media that we maintain, so Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. And in a second, I'll put some of these links in the chat feature. We also have a YouTube channel with different videos featuring farmers across the state. And we have a really active listserv that I moderate. There are two that we work with. We have one that's specifically focused for service providers and coalition partners, and we have 219 members on that. And then we also have one specifically focused on beginning farmer and ranchers, and that has about 757 participants and growing. And this kind of distinction highlights the two main audiences we really work with in our coalition. We're not only working to support beginning farmers, but we're really working to support service providers that provide the content on the ground to beginning farmers. So we're really working on networking and connection and capacity building for both of those audiences. Just invite you to find us online. Our website link is here. We have our Facebook and social media as well, and you're welcome to reach out to me if you're interested in any more information about our model. Also, if you want to get on our listserv, I'm happy to add you to that as well. And I'll put our link in the chat to the website so you can have some of that information. So that's all I have to share today, and I'm excited to share more in the panel.
Thanks so much, Katie. It was really interesting to hear kind of how everyone's approaches are different and then similar in some ways. And I know that with beginning farmers, it takes a village. And at USDA, we talk a lot about like building your bench. And, for me, my bias is, that includes making sure you're using all of your USDA tools in your toolbox, but then also all of the ones in your community. So the organizations like yours and the universities and all of those resources. And I'm a beginning farmer, and I, despite kind of my knowledge of everything and all of our programs here, and I'm a multi-generational farmer, I still also really rely on organizations like the ones that you have for, in part, it's networking, it's connection, but it's also some of that technical assistance and support. Can be really make or break for farmers, whether they're first or multi-generational. But I've got some questions for you all, and then folks who are joining us can also put questions in the box to tee up the question box. But I'm going to start with Jennifer. You all have been doing this work for a long time, and you've had kind of a good long time to observe trends and patterns. But you've got to start a while ago. Can you talk a little bit about your early collaborations during the inception of your programming, and if you're still working with those partners, or how your partnership model has evolved over time? And then other folks can chime in.
Sure, absolutely. I think that was one of the unique things about this project, is that we were started as a partnership project. So we are a program of the Tufts Friedman School of Nutrition Science and Policy, and very early on, we're bringing in folks from the Department of Agriculture and UMass Extension and NRCS and Farm Service Agency as kind of the initial advisory board. Like, that's who I was interviewed by when I was hired for this job almost 20 years ago. And we've maintained a lot of those partnerships over time. I mean, when we first started, we didn't really even have an office anywhere. So one person was sitting in our Department of Ag's land use office in one part of the state. Someone else was literally in that Farm Service Agency office. Someone else was in the basement of a community organization, and somebody was at Tufts. And so we were spread out in, like, rooted in the offices of our core partners to get started. And then, you know, I think partnerships do come and go, organizations come and go. And I think, you know, we've really been, you know, I never really want to recreate the wheel or do work that's already being done. And so if we can reach out to other organizations who are in the space and that's their specialty, like, we want to partner and be able to make, you know, really solid referrals of beginning farmers, or invite them in to come and present about their programs in our courses and workshops and make those direct connections. Because over the years, we've added a lot of programming because there wasn't anyone in the space. And as soon as there is more momentum or more capacity, it's like, if somebody else can do that, great, we don't have to do it anymore. We can, like, you know, partner with them and make those referrals. So I think that's, you know, just keeping an eye on the field, I guess, is kind of what I like to think about, and seeing, you know, what new organizations are popping up where they're filling a need or an express need of farmers. And, you know, like, we've worked with, I'm on the advisory board of the Carrot Project, and they're really started out to fill that kind of gap around small farm financing. And now, as you know, FSA has a microloan program and other folks are getting into micro lending for farming, they've been able to pivot more into business technical assistance. And so we don't have to be an expert in that all the time, and can make referrals to them to offer that support. So, you know, I think things are continually evolving as people step into the space. You know, the legal food hub, you know, we used to work a lot with SCORE, or trying to figure out, like, how do we get farmers, you know, legal support? And then all of a sudden, Conservation Law Foundation builds this incredible new program. And so we've been able to partner on legal education and things like that. So I think as this space continues to evolve, you know, paying attention to that and being networked. We also formed a beginning farmer network in our state long ago, and it's been hard to keep the funding consistent to maintain it. So I'm always, you know, envious of groups like Virginia Tech and the Maine Beginning Farmer Coalition that keep it going over time. But we've had different groups kind of take up the mantle in that space. And so, yeah, I think it's just, you know, good to figure out when partnerships kind of fade and let them go, and then pick up new ones as they come, and just continue that evolution as a learning organization, and as a, you know, being open to partnering.
Yeah, and similar to you, Jennifer, we felt that dynamic nature of partnerships, and we started with a small group of partnerships in 2011, and it grew over time, and we're pretty much working with the vast majority of those partnerships. But what we've found is we have organizational partners, and the people within those organizations shift. So we really just continually emphasize that relationship building. Like the other day, we had a meeting with the new NRCS point of contact, and really just getting them looped in. So it's really tending those partnerships in that way, where there can be a long-standing organizational partnership, but still needing the emphasis and stewardship of one-on-one relationships with the point people within those organizations. And I think the evolution of our model over time has been, what's been really neat is we had a management team with a number of partners that were on the BFRDP grant. And in Virginia Tech was the project lead for the first few rounds of funding. And we felt it was really important as kind of a Southern land grant partnership to share the leadership with Virginia State University. So they are now the lead, and they've been the lead for the past 2 rounds. And the focus has really gone to really stewarding that relationship, that working relationship. And we're also hoping to kind of open it back up to having more consistent meetings with more of our coalition partners. But we've really been emphasizing that land grant institution relationship over the last few years, which has been really rewarding, and I think really important for capacity building.
Sarah, I would just add that our organization is much smaller. That's on the Farm is more of a local grassroots kind of organization. So for us, that looks a little bit different, although we have some of the same players that both Jennifer and Katie have talked about. Certainly we work with FSA and NRCS, but always on that local level, or at least initially it was all on that local level. So we kind of bootstrapped a little bit more maybe, and we're still considered in our infancy at just 5 years old. But all of those, I think the commonality that we all have is just the relationships, and it is the people within those organizations. And so they certainly, there's times when people move on and somebody else might come in and they might be another great strong partner, or they may not be. It just depends on what their interest is. But I think having those relationships both at that local level and and moving on up the chain is extremely valuable. And it's the one thing that I think we can all share, even though our programs are different in the way that they're backed and supported, and really their beginnings of where they started.
Thank you all. Those are really insightful responses. And I am also sure that, in addition to, Katie, you talked about change, I'm thinking about, at least at USDA, we have our beginning farmer state coordinators, and this is a new role, it was created in the Farm Bill. And so now we have a beginning farmer point of contact. And so you also are probably kind of dealing with some of these other changes, and now there's more people to fold into your network, and you probably have to keep up with some of those policy pieces on the fly too.
But that's a wonderful thing. And we certainly love all the new programs that have been rolled out through USDA. And as I had mentioned, 10 years ago, it looked a little different. They were there, but just really in the beginnings. Certainly today, and within the last 4 years, those have grown significantly.
I would say too, we've been really, really lucky with our both our state agencies and our federal counterparts. I think we're a small state, and they really have always had a genuine interest in supporting small and alternative and socially disadvantaged farmers and ranchers. So we work with a lot of immigrants and refugees with farming backgrounds to help them get started in farming. And I feel like since day one, they've always wanted to be a very strong partner with us. So kind of come to us, and then we bring them into programs. So I feel like, I know I've certainly been in sessions where that hasn't been the case across the country, where there are challenges in getting some agency folks to really work with folks who are underserved or not really identified and connected to USDA programs. And I've never felt that in my tenure here. So I'm really grateful to our Massachusetts and New England as a whole, really feeling like people in our federal and state programs are looking to serve the kind of farmers that we work with, not just the conventional farmers or dairy farmers or other folks that are already on their radar, but like really coming to help sponsor our urban farming conference, and like really getting the word out about the high tunnel programs and EQIP and microloan programs, and like trying to really work with our farmers to help them figure out a pathway into a lot of the other programs. So we're fortunate in that way that partnering is easy in that way, being a small state with 7,000 farmers across the country, or across our region, that of all different sizes and scales. So yeah.
And that's definitely something that goes both ways. At USDA, we rely a lot on organizations to help us reach producers, particularly those that are underserved. So it's a really good mutual partnership. So for everybody who's listening in and joining, remember that these are really critical collaborations, and we have a lot of shared goals, particularly in that space. And that actually kind of dovetails into my next question, which I'm going to kick to Vicki to answer first, because your organization has, I think, a little bit more of a tailored focus with your work on veterans. How do you identify and select partners, or make sure that you have common goals, and to what degree is that necessary?
Well, that's a great question. And it is important that we do identify and select, because it's really easy to say yes. And there's a lot of people and organizations that want to get involved because, just the veteran community is a feel-good thing, right? But early on in the programming of Vets on the Farm, I had met with Jason Alves. He's actually the president of our state chapter of the Farmer Veteran Coalition. And He's who I work with as the program manager with the Washington Department of Veteran Affairs. And he told me, he said, be very, very careful about getting caught up in the sea of goodwill. He said, and just remember, you can't be all things to all people. And so I really took that to heart from the beginning. And while it's really easy to say yes, because we want partners, there's been times that we've had to step back and say, this might not be a good fit for us. I would say the majority of the time we get to say yes, but there's been a few instances where we maybe our goals were not completely aligned, and we had to, say that that probably wasn't a good fit for us. But overall, I think what we look at is the relationships in the community, what the goals are as far as our delivery of our food system. Is it, is it a locally, is it something that we want to integrate into our local food system? How's it serving our veteran population? And then the converse of that, how is our veteran population serving the community? Because that's a big part of our program, is that integration from their military careers and life into the civilian world. And for a lot of them, that's a difficult transition. And so programs like this become that conduit for them, and it becomes really important and a great way for it to happen. And I've got to witness this personally just over the last 5 years, watching, some of our veterans that have worked on the farm, and, initially they're really reluctant to have a lot of conversation with civilians. You can see the difference when they're talking to a fellow veteran or when they're talking to somebody that's outside of that world. But over time that changes, and they become more and more comfortable in those settings. And that's why we like our interns to do a lot of our mobile farm stands and getting out there and doing some of our education programs that we have. We work with our county libraries, and we take actually our farm truck out there and deliver fresh food. And a lot of it we just give away for free, and introducing kids to better nutrition. And but that also gives our veterans an opportunity to just talk to people. So we look at those sorts of collaborative opportunities. And again, when we were approached by the Spokane library system, you'd think, well, what would they have to do with a veteran-based ag program? Well, it turned out it's been one of our greatest partners, and there's no monetary exchange there. This is just truly a community partnership, and it's one where the community gets to learn more about food and where their food comes from, and our veterans get to provide a service back to the community that they feel is valuable. And all of that leads to, everybody as a win-win.
I would say too, kind of to piggyback on that a little bit, when we first started our food access work, it was very similar. We were trying to figure out what were the best partnerships for us to get food into the community where it was needed. And we did a lot of trial and error with a lot of different partners, and wrote a lot of grant proposals on behalf of partners, sort of hoping, because our model is that we purchase the product from our farmers and then provide it to the food access partner, and then they're responsible for the distribution to the end consumer or user of that product. We tried doing our own distribution on that side, and it was just really challenging dealing with so many individuals beyond our CSA program. And so we really like to kind of hone in on partners that already have a ready audience, whether that's a WIC nutritional program and doing already nutrition education programs, or a food pantry that already has distribution, or a senior center where they have a programming, things like that. And so, we would write grants to get the project started and evaluate it and show that it has value to both partners, and then kind of hope that the partner we were serving would continue and find the funding in order to be able to pay us to buy the food from the farmers, and we could just be kind of the vendor supplier. And so some of those partnerships didn't always work out. Like once the funding dried up, then the other partner wasn't able to secure the resources to keep it going. And so, after trying a lot of that over the years, we really have landed on the partnerships that are sustainable financially, where they're able to continue to provide the resources, whether it's through a community benefits program or as part of their ongoing operational costs, to continue with that. So I think, there is a lot of trial and error with things that, you can incentivize people for a while, and then when the incentive goes away, if it's just not possible, sometimes you have to move on and look for those opportunities that that can sustain themselves over the long haul to meet your mission.
Yeah, and just to build on that, our scale's a little bit different, but we also find that common goals are really critical. So part of our process was developing those common goals, and really it was a little more simple in our context because everybody was really wanting beginning farmers to be able to succeed in our community. So that was really this rallying cause. And over time, as we've developed a really clear mission, goals, and objectives, we really use that as a way to invite people in if they find their goals are congruent with that. So that's kind of our kind of measure of our congruency at this point, and it ties in to the model that we really developed the entire coalition around, which is the collective impact model, which has been outlined by a number of people, but I'll put one organization in the chat. Kanya and Kramer is a really seminal work on that. But that common agenda and goals is one element of the ability to have a collective impact on your community. Another one is really that backbone support that we're able to provide as a coalition. And Virginia Tech really just providing these ways of, pulling in partnerships, capacity building, and bringing people together. So that's definitely one of the major parts of our collective impact model, that shared common agenda and really being able to do more than each of us individually could do.
Thanks, Katie. And you all have kind of touched on this a little bit, but Katie, you mentioned you all work with a lot of organizations because you operate on this sort of larger collective and network and have some unique structures there, and you also partner with another university. So I am assuming that sometimes your partnerships are not necessarily like monetary or financial or grant based. How do you work effectively with partners that maybe the partnership is not tied to any financial or grant function? How do you kind of approach that work where maybe you're doing something very similar, or you're trying to fold in something where there's it's maybe more in kind?
Yeah, great question. We have found we approach people just to see how we can really support having this framework. We like to be able to share our capacities and skills with other people. So for instance, with COVID shifting a lot of conference offerings, one of our partners, the Virginia Association for Biological Farmers, is pivoting their conference to more of a 3-month-long virtual series. And so we were, thinking about what we could do for uplifting what everybody in our coalition is doing, but then also how we can partner and support organizations in our coalition. So we're specifically working with them to develop a 3-month webinar series, and so we could each do this individually. We could be creating our new content for the coalition, and they could be creating their content for their audience. But we've really decided to join forces and make it thematically congruent. So we've worked with both of our advisory groups to get input, and we've been able to kind of come up with what would be a really nicely packaged opportunity for people to come together in the winter for training opportunities. So we were really excited just to have that potential for us to collaborate and not only extend our reach, but really work cohesively across our state. So that's how a lot of the non-monetary agreements work out. It's just really being able to weave together our offerings so that it's comprehensive and congruent and effective for our audience of beginning farmers in Virginia.
Thanks. It looks like a couple of questions have populated in the chat here. We have one where somebody would like to know if you have any specific insights or recommendations when it comes to working with farmers of color or Indigenous farmers or LGBTQ producers.
We've done a lot of work at New Entry with, immigrants and refugees and farmers of color over the years. We were one of the first programs almost in the country that was doing that 20 plus years ago. And so I think really building partnerships, for us to continue that pipeline, we worked a lot with different mutual assistance associations, whether it was, the African Association or the Cambodian Mutual Assistance Association. We would do outreach spots on Latino, Spanish language radios and do interviews on local cable news that were translated into different languages to get the word out in the community. And then we had bilingual staff that would also help with translation. We have partnerships with translators that help with different programming in that respect. And then now we have some partnerships with other urban ag groups as outreach partners and building that pipeline of folks to come into our program. And so, have that, just kind of also making sure that we're always educating our own staff and partners about anti-racism work and how to be inclusive and, conscientious of people's different backgrounds and making everybody feel welcome and making sure that our materials are accessible. We've done a lot of work over the years writing in plain language, which isn't, which is a different approach to making information that you want to share really clear and accessible to people, and not dumbing it down, but making it really straightforward and clear, like what are the essential pieces of information that need to communicate so that we can take, complex topics. A lot of, we did some analysis of like literacy levels of a lot of government publications. If you're trying to develop a fact sheet about, applying for a farm service agency loan, a lot of that's written at a graduate degree level or certainly, college level. And so how do we, write things in ways that are accessible to farmers of different backgrounds and education levels. And so I think a lot of keeping those things in mind around how you design your programs and who your outreach partners are, and then how internal to your organization you can foster, a welcoming environment that meets people where they're at.
And to add to that, our focus in the coalition has really evolved over the last few rounds into serving socially disadvantaged, military veterans, and minority farmers. So that's also why it's been such an important strategy to really be sharing the leadership, because VSU, as an HC, as a historically Black college and university, really has the skill sets and ability to bring that forward. So I just put their program in the chat feature to share with you, because it's really a new and beginning farmer program that's specifically targeted to that audience. And so we've been really appreciating what they're bringing forward into our coalition and the ways that we're moving forward with beginning farmer training in the state, because it really is a diverse audience of people who are wanting to become farmers. And so being able to truly address the needs of everybody is our goal.
I would just say though too, I think the farming community as a whole has a long way to go. I think, people are this year more than ever having really great and deep conversations about anti-racism work and looking at the food system and looking at the statistics, which bear out that we live in a white supremacy culture with 98% of our farmland being owned by white people. And there just, I think, has been a lot of historical discrimination and bias that we need to work really hard to overcome and invite people in and address land theft and co-optation of indigenous culture and slavery and like a lot of the issues that I think many people are really uncomfortable talking about. And so these conversations are definitely front and center, at least in our world, working in the food system at the moment. And I hope that that really continues and we can all really look at what we need to be doing to make the food and agriculture sector a welcoming space for everyone, because there are definitely, everyone eats and everyone would love to be able to participate and, in the food system and have, build wealth with land access and, have a viable business and feed their communities. And I think those are really important things. And we all have to question our own, complicity in that system that we're upholding and start to dismantle it and make sure that those opportunities are available for everyone to participate in. So that is our charge, as all of us on this panel, being white, white presenting, that we have to do that work ourselves and with our peers. Yeah.
Yeah, and those are all really good recommendations, especially when you're talking about, partnership and having tough conversations. We know that it's not always easy, but at least in my work, I have seen, and like we know that the beginning farmer community is quite diverse, and there is a lot of opportunity to engage with a lot of different types of producers. I always say there's no typical beginning farmer or rancher. They all have some unique needs, and it's a really big tent, and there's so much opportunity to do this work, especially through these types of partnerships. And I think it's also a really good opportunity for us at USDA to work effectively with these partners for doing this work and have these trusted relationships with the communities and who know them and understand these populations, and we make sure that we get the resources to them that they need, and that they're accessible. So thank you all for doing that work. We've got a couple more questions. Kind of, we talked about what makes good, but on the other side of this, are there any criteria or like lessons learned that you can share about maintaining or establishing partnerships, or knowing kind of when to let them go, when things don't work? Any flags or advice you can kind of share for folks in that space?
I would say one example I could share from a long time ago. We used to partner financially with Extension in our state. It was just not really possible for them to work with us. We started putting them in subawards to all of our grant funds, and then started getting a lot of pushback from our grant reviewers being like, why are you funding Extension to work with you? Shouldn't they just be working with you? And there's a lot of challenges with the funding that Extension received. And so, after a while, that funding kept, diminishing what we could justifiably request in some of our grants. And so at one point, it just became more cost effective for us to hire our own staff person to kind of play that role, because our land grant is on the other side of the state. So for them, for us to be paying a salary position for them to come over, drive across the state and come and scout our farms for pests and leave us with a list of follow-up action items, and then we'd see them once a month. It was like, oh, so at some point we both kind of came together and realized it wasn't supporting their goals and it wasn't supporting our goals. And so, we figured out, like, how can we find those points of intersection where we can invite them into a workshop or do this, but like, it didn't make sense to have, us paying a salary graduate student or someone that we weren't just going to get the value that we needed out of that. So that was, something that was hard at the time, but it made sense financially and just programmatically where we both were. And then so we evolved into kind of building our own internal capacity to offer those services. So that's just one specific example. And I think I gave some others earlier around some food access partnerships that we just realized unless we were funding them and they weren't going to sustain themselves over time, and just had to kind of let some of those go, even though the work was really important. It's just like, we need somebody else to leverage the resources so that we can continue to do this. And we're just going to kind of veer ourselves to where those resources are showing themselves to be more sustainable in the long run.
Sarah, I would just add that the one that comes to mind for us is we had a partner at the very beginning who has a national presence, but certainly has a local presence as well. And they're politically very active, and it became more and more that we didn't really align with their politics, and we try to stay very politically neutral. And when they couldn't do that, it just didn't seem like a good fit for us, because they were going to our state legislators and promoting their agenda, which just didn't feel right to us, as far as who we represent, and wanting to be, again, very neutral in that representation. So that was one that we just stepped away from. And again, we're still a relatively young organization, so it may be that there's more, but that's the one that comes to mind for me. And it really had to be, it was really centered around lobbying efforts and politics.
And we haven't really had to step away from any partnerships, but we have found, similar to how we were discussing earlier in the conversation, the evolution of stronger and weaker relationships over time. And what's been helpful conceptually is to acknowledge there are certain tiers of partnerships that we have. Some of them are really strong and associated with funding as well. So that's like Virginia Tech and VSU and Extension combined. And then we have another tier of organizations that are on our BFRDP grant, and they're really the operational arms of being able to provide educational programming to beginning farmers in the state. So there are a couple organizations we work with closely in that way. And then we have the broader suite of partnerships in our organization as well. So it's just kind of been a helpful way of conceptualizing the different layers of our partnerships and that network of how we're all connected with stronger and weaker relationships at different times.
Well, it sounds like you all have found really sort of tactful and effective ways to manage some of those challenges. And you know, we're coming up on time, but I did want to close with one last opportunity here. And you all are on this panel because you have a long history of successful partnerships and effective work, and you've demonstrated that you can build and maintain dynamic beginning farmer and rancher supporting networks. So if you have any parting words or insights, I always say the special sauce, like what's the secret ingredient that makes this work? If there's anything that hasn't been shared with yet that you would like to, now's the time.
I'll just uplift what I've already shared, but I think in response to that question, I think our partnerships have been successful because we've always had a priority in our the ways that we're meeting our goals is capacity building and coalition building. That's been a primary objective along with educational programming. So I think that's what helped us be really successful, along with the ability to really embody shared leadership. So tech being the primary lead on our BFRDP grant for a few cycles, and then really handing it over to another organization and really allowing space for the unique expressions of those different organizations to come through in the ways that we work together. So I think those two things, the commitment to capacity building and also shared leadership.
And I would just say that, as far as the secret sauce goes, I'll go back to the relationships piece and just state that because we are such a grassroots organization, being able to offer our veterans one-on-one, coaching, mentorship, we try to pair them up with somebody that's doing what they want to do, and really being able to listen to them and having this mutual respect for what their goals are, and of course then what the goals are of our organization, but listening to what it is that they want throughout their time with us is really important. So I like to think of it as our opportunity to give them a hand up and not necessarily a hand out, and being able to again help create that roadmap for them for their future, because knowing that we're able to help a veteran into this new career field is also knowing that we're helping our entire community. And again, once we can start, connecting those dots, we'll make for a better world.
I really like that as well. I mean, I probably said it before too, but I think really finding those partnerships that's mutually beneficial. I mean, I know we've kind of all been saying that, but I think it needs to be a two-way street. We get a lot out of the partnerships and leverage our capacity, and then hopefully for the partner as well, it's really adding value to their work and what they do. And so if we can offer them an audience of beginning farmers that they can reach that they might not already be connected to, and introduce them their services to and provide support to, and then obviously it helps us meet our mission to make sure that our farmers are connected to as many support systems. I think, Sarah, you said it at the very beginning, it does take a village. And I think, as much as everybody in that village can be sort of pointing in the same direction and working towards shared goals, that's the key with it. And then recognizing yeah, your successes and keeping that line of communication open so that, if somebody is providing a service to you, whether it's compensated or in kind, that you also report back and let people know how valuable that was. I mean, I think taking that appreciation and having that feedback mechanism so people know why they're doing it and the outcome of that and then that it's appreciated. I think those are all, parts of maintaining the relationship and having that be mutually beneficial so that people understand why they're in it and they hopefully want to keep showing up and keep contributing and everybody will benefit from that.
Well, thank you all. I don't think that I can really top that or add that much more. You've done a great job of, also demonstrating how people-centered this work is. We're talking about farming, but it's a lot of it is relationships. So thank you so much for joining us today and sharing the work that you do and your insights and your lessons learned. And we're gonna wrap here and give folks a little time to transition to the next session. So thank you everyone, and folks can, I'm sure, reach out to you and follow up or find you in our little virtual networking sessions after this. Thanks everyone.
Thanks, Sarah.